Think Bigger podcast, community conversations. And today we're having a conversation with a member of the community named Dennis, who, amongst other things, is the creator and artist behind Max Boost.
Yep. Good to be here, man.
Dennis.
Thank you.
No, absolutely, man. It's good to have you. Now, let's just get right into that Max Boost, right? Kickstarter Volume 2. The
Yep.
OGs and some of the youngsters are actually going to immediately know what that is. But there are going to be many people. This podcast reaches out to a very wide variety of people. So for the people that have no idea what that is, tell them about it, Dennis.
All right. So one of the easiest ways for me to explain Max Boost, if you don't know what it is to start at the beginning, which is how many of you know Import Tuner Magazine? And so Import Tuner Magazine launched in 1998, and it was one of the OG magazines. And there's a big story here. It launched in 98, and I was actually an integral part of Import Tuner Magazine in that launch. So I've said it a few times before, but not too many times. A lot of people don't realize this. But those who knew Import Tuner Magazine, I actually helped design the original design for Import Tuner Magazine, including the logo. Mm-hmm. And the concept of Import Tuner. And so there's a story behind that. And to make a long story short, Max Boost was the featured comic since issue number 1 that ran monthly as a 2-page to 4-page comic strip based on tuning culture and all that in Import Tuner Magazine. And it was very successful. So and it's the story is basically about Max. The main character's name is Max, and his sidekick Otto, and their adventures in Motorville, and everything they do to try to basically be street what do you call it? The king of all street racers, I guess.
Okay, yeah,
and fight for street supremacy as they get picked on by big V8s, and in particular a guy named Todd who drives a Mustang. So so there's a whole story here. It ran for almost 10 years in Import Tuner Magazine.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I'll say is that it became so popular back then. And this is crazy because definitely before Instagram, before Facebook was really big. We never really had social media at the time because it ran from 1998 to 2006. Mm-hmm. But it had such a huge following, and 75% of the people that subscribed to Max Boost subscribed to Import Tuner Magazine, subscribed because of Max Boost, and that was a huge part of it. So I want to go in more detail. I'm not sure if you want me to jump into that detail or what you want.
This is not about limitations, man. This is when you said long story short, I was about to interrupt you and say it does not have to be a shortened version. I mean, by all means, you guys, those of you that know, this is already going to be an amazing backstory, some of you wouldn't have known already about the integrated nature of Max Boost and Import Tuner. But for those of you that don't know, I mean, when you're done listening, I'm going to put all of Dennis's and Max Boost information, and you guys, take the time to check it out, and you will see the history of it and how far it goes back. I love learning some of these extra details and about the history of it, because in the mid to late 90s was when I was starting to get heavily into the community in the Southern California car culture, and magazines were everything to us. So Super Street, Import Tuner, Honda Tuning, Sport Compact Car, Turbo, etc., etc. So, man, I mean, the cartoons, Max Boost, and we can get into autocannon and all those other things. Yeah. But it's just one of those things that it was there, it was part of it, and as everything sort of evolved, it was one of the many things that sort of, you sort of just blink your eyes and you're like, I don't even remember when Max Boost was gone. But we all remember it being there. I'm serious. Like, I couldn't tell you when it disappeared. I remember it. I remember going to the magazine aisle, and all of these magazines were I was just devouring the information. And it's amazing to get this many years later, right? You have the evolution of the print and magazine industry, and yet here we are with print coming back and Max Boost coming back. So it's kind of a cool irony. And
Yeah.
let's go into that. I mean, by all means, continue.
Yeah, so let's take the short story and let's get longer. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, um, so my name's Dennis Caco, and
Mm-hmm.
I originally started out in high school wanting to be a comic book artist. I'm Filipino, I'm Asian, so that does not fly, right, in the family for the most part, right?
Sure.
So that I had to fight. I had to fight to be an artist, really. And no, my mom was cool, totally supportive, but you know what I mean. Like
I
at the end of
do.
the day, she wishes she knew I was smart. I could have been an attorney. I could have been a this. I could have been a that. But I really decided to pursue my art in high school, and I went all the way. And and I was a struggling, starving artist. The stories are real, right? I was eating
Yep.
cup of noodles and cokes every day, just so that I could do what I loved. I had a studio. I literally all my money I ever made in comics I would put back just to have a studio in downtown San Diego on Fifth Avenue, right in the middle of what is now Gaslamp Quarter.
Gas lamp. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was cool. It wasn't cool back then. Back then, it was sketchy. You come out at 2 a.m., after
Sure.
I had a long night of drawing, and it's not a place you hang out, right?
Well,
So,
that made it affordable because if you tried to do that at the gas lamp right now,
no, 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 no. No,
okay.
that same place that I was sitting in that cost me hundreds of dollars a month would be,
Yeah.
thousands.
Yeah.
And that building, and literally that building went from like 1 million to 10 million in value.
Oh,
Like, so, uh, so yeah, and so I wanted to be a comic book artist. I started off doing comic book art and coloring actually at a company called In Color. So I was coloring for a lot of major car companies, comic book companies,
sure.
and just trying to get my foot in the door. And I just hustled really hard, and eventually, I ended up getting my first, having the opportunity to get one of my first new cars.
Okay.
So this is all in high school, right? So here I am trying to be a comic book artist. I didn't get the car bug yet, which is interesting. I actually
Ah,
accidentally fell into it, and this is a story I don't think I've told really, other than right here, right now. So check this out.
okay.
So I'm a
Awesome.
car guy. I could almost care less about cars. It was interesting because I used to think they were A to B kind of transportation thing. But what was interesting was my dad actually was into cars. He'd fix up his cars. He worked on his own cars, but not a tuner guy, but just a guy who worked on cars. And
Sure.
I never was around it, and but it was there. And then one day, like I needed a car in high school finally, and I got my hand-me-down car, which was our very first car we ever owned in the United States when we moved here from the Philippines. It was a Toyota Celica 1981 GT.
Okay.
And that car is actually the car that's in my first panel of the first comic of the first issue of Max Boost. And so I drove that during high school, rust bucket, barely did 75 miles per hour.
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
it had hundreds and hundred thousand miles. Well, check this out. So one day, I finally get to a place where I'm like, oh man, I want a new car just because. Um,
Okay.
and I looked around and we're like, it was funny. The car I actually wanted, and I wasn't a car guy yet, right? So I didn't know. I wanted a Toyota Celica GT, the new one, the bug-eyed one.
Sure. Sure.
So I'm asking my dad. I'm like, hey, can we go to the Mila Cars place down here in National City called the Mila
Yeah.
Cars? And I'm like, you know that spot?
I know exactly where that is.
But that was the day my life changed. So what happened was we parked. I get out and we're going to go check out the Celica GT that I'm sure he wasn't going to buy me and I couldn't afford, but I just wanted to go check out a new car.
Sure.
As I'm walking down the sidewalk towards a Toyota dealership, I had to, at the time, pass an Acura dealership. I'll never forget the moment. I'm walking with my dad, getting ready, excited to go to the Toyota dealership. And as I'm walking, basically a really slick salesman, young guy, blonde dude named Brian, comes climbing over to us. And he's like, where you
Okay.
going?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're going to go check out the Celica GT, kind of annoyed a little bit. He's like,
Yeah.
what? And he basically called him a hunk of junk. Why would you look at that? Come check out our Integra. And I'm like, what do you mean? It wasn't even on my list.
Sure.
And so I'm like, okay. And I remember him taking me. So long story short, he was so annoying. We decided to just go ahead and go to the Acura dealership, go look at these Integras.
So he was
And,
pesky. He wouldn't let you keep walking.
nah, he was slick. And I was
Mm.
like, and I walked over there, and I'm glad this happened because it changed my life. And so we go over there. I'd never driven a car hard. I've never driven fast. I drove stick. I just never raced. I wasn't a street racer or anything. But Brian gave us this test drive that broke my head. I had no idea what an
Okay.
Integra could do. I had no idea what a red line was. And he was just blasting this car everywhere. And it just blew my mind. And then not only that, he let me drive it that way, which blew my mind. And
Sure.
I never drove that hard before. It was the first time was that, and I couldn't stop. So it was a white Acura Integra RS.
Okay.
And so you know what? After that, I don't know if we ended up at the Toyota dealership. I think I just decided to not go. I was
I
so
see.
blown away by the Integra. Come back home, can't get the car. And my dad's like, no, I'm not
Sure.
gonna get you that. And at the time, I remember the price was only 13,900. It was
So it was a
like
brand new one.
yeah, absolutely. They were all new. It was a brand new Integra,
Okay.
and so 94.
Mm-hmm.
The year was 94, and so yeah. So then I was on this kind of mission to eventually get one, and then I started making some money. I worked at doing assistant art directing at Jostens Learning Corporation. And as a young kid in my teens, I was basically making too much money.
Okay.
And I had nothing, and I still lived at home. So I had money to spare, and I was able to afford buying a car. So I went back
Okay.
to that mile of cars, and I ended up buying a GSR.
Okay.
It was a four-door GSR. It was green. Again, still not in the not still. I had no idea I was buying basically one of the rice rockets of all rice rockets at the time. I knew nothing about the industry yet, and then bought that. And I heard about like street racing and people screwing around or people tuning cars. I didn't know anything about it yet though, and so I started getting excited in my car. I started driving it hard. I really loved it. I thought it was really amazing, but I had no skill to drive. And one day I was driving too hard, too fast, wrong place, Carroll Canyon, Sereno Valley. A lot of people know Sereno Valley if you're in San Diego. And I ended up crashing my car, and it was 2 months old. I just put the new plates
Ah,
on it,
I
and I
see.
rolled it. I could have died if there was basically a tree that went through the trunk, that could have went through obviously the cabin instead. But it was the funny part is like after I rolled over, I was upside down. I remember thinking to myself how well the seat belts worked. It was amazing.
Okay. Okay.
And then I'm looking in front of me. I crashed into these bushes and trees and all this stuff. And all I saw in the windshield, if you can imagine, full of bushes. And I just thought, wow, this looks like an aquarium. And I'm upside down, right? And so,
Okay.
but what's funny is I got out of the car super fast, so fast. And I was actually in a shirt and tie because I was going to an interview
All right.
for another job. People that were driving by were so panicked. They're like, "Is the guy in there okay? Is he okay?" And I looked all, I was in my suit, so I looked all good. Like couldn't possibly be me in the car. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm
I
fine."
see.
They're
I
like,
see.
"Who are
Interesting.
you?" "Oh my God." "You say you're driving the car?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then what was crazy about that part was that since I crashed that, I decided to get another GSR, and it happened to be a black coupe this time.
Okay. That's far
And
better than a green four door.
yeah, the black coupe, and that's the one that got me into all of this mess. That's the one that eventually ended up in Turbo Magazine as one of the first GSR drag Generation 2 Turbo. And I'll get into that little story a little bit, but that's the one that got me into this entire thing. Ended up going to a battle of the imports.
Sure.
One of my friends was like, "Hey, can you come with me to this tuner shop?" And the tuner shop, he was just going there to buy light bulbs. And I went into this tuner shop called Online Performance in Chula Vista, basically. And I was like, what is going on here? I mean, he was buying light bulbs, but there was headers, there was exhausts, there was
Sure.
cars. And I happened to have the right car for the job. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the beginning of all of that. Um, and yeah, so that whole story, that GSR, is the thing that really got me into loving cars, tuning, motorsports, racing, all of it. And there's obviously a big story after that. So to summarize this whole thing that I've been talking about, this first segment is that car and my passion for art collided.
Mm.
And in that collision, I did two things that most people know me for. Or they actually don't know me. They know it. One was all the apparel that I did in the tuning industry, all those T-shirts.
Yeah.
Called, from Autocannon, Shift Gear. All those were my brands. And then also the big one is Max Boost and Import Tuner magazine. So there I am. And kind of been talking for a long time, so I want to make sure I can have you jump in here if you need to.
I mean, when a person's going, man, you just let them go.
Right on.
But the whole thing about it is, I had a ton of people in San Diego, and I've known people all over that area, and the car culture there was and still is huge. But back then, street racing and even the Filipino community, it was huge.
Yeah.
So I actually find it fascinating that as it's the mid to late 90s, you're still like not. I mean, you ended up getting the car in 94, but up until that point, you had said you just didn't care about cars.
I cared about art first.
Yeah, you said you were into art, and you knew nothing about the car community and the car world. So it's kind of a cool change that you have the Toyota blood, which is very common for Filipinos, and it really
for
is.
Sure.
Yeah,
it is a thing.
You're on the way to go get one, and then you have a guy named Brian who just wouldn't let you go, and that's what turned it into you getting into an Acura. So it's cool that you didn't get hurt, and that first crash,
no, for sure.
helped you get into something else. So that the black coupe, is where it all started as far as for your personal car.
Yeah.
And it turned into the vehicle that you ended up getting those modifications for.
Yeah. Yep.
The drag kit and all of those types of things. So when did you realize the art was obviously first and foremost, and then you end up getting to your car? When did you decide, or was it instantaneous, that there was a way to bring the two together?
Oh, okay. So check this out. So one of the places I was going when I crashed in my first car was a company called ODM, Elias Design and Marketing. Now, you may not know that name, but if you're around anywhere in the 90s, 2000s, you've definitely seen their stuff. They were one of the largest T-shirt licensor companies in the United States. And I used to, I don't know if I've ever said this actually, I used to be one of their top 3 artists for T-shirt designs. And I used to do a lot of if you're in the lowrider community, I used to do a lot of the airbrushed looking T-shirts with lowriders on them called Rollin' Deep originally, and then eventually became known as Rollin' Hard. And that was so I was doing those T-shirts back in the day before I was a tuner. And then when I eventually became a tuner, I was like, dude, we don't have any apparel representing us at all here in the and I was like, I gotta get this going. And that's where I started. I actually melded my my T-shirt background with the tuner industry, and I started making shirts. And I still have those original designs. And that was a hard hustle. That was like, okay, well, let's see if anybody wants any of these. And there was a crazy story there. And I know your podcast is about, people breaking through boundaries and making things happen. So kind of go into that a little bit, because starting your own apparel company back then is very different than it is today. It was so hard. Think about it, like how hard that was before marketing and social media was the way that it is today.
Sure. Yeah.
You're building a brand and making any kind of money was way difficult. And so I decided, I'm like, I'm going to start my own t-shirt brand. And this is one of the things I don't think I've ever talked about before. So the other brand that I actually started and I created, I don't think I've ever said this. and to kind of keep it under wraps a little bit, was so I was working with Tony and those guys over at ODM, made a lot of the Roland Hart stuff. I was actually the first person to three-dimensionalize the Mickey's Hornet, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty fun. I did a lot of projects over there, and they became $100 million plus company. And so, but I wanted to obviously do my own thing. And one of the things I ended up starting, actually the first brand I started was not autocannon. It was actually a brand called Zoom, ZUM.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was mine, and I created that brand, and I did it with a partner, and that was my blood, sweat, and tears and passion. And I worked on that thing. We're making T-shirts. I didn't make any money for like 2 years, easy. And it was a year and a half, I think. And then when we finally started making money, I'm trying to say this in a gentle way, because
which you
I
don't have to, by the way.
Yeah. No. I'm trying to say because it's more authentic for me, not because I'm trying to hold back. Is because things just happen. Everyone has a perspective, and everybody has a way it went. But at the time, I got basically kicked out of my own company that I created, and that was my brand. I literally created that brand, and then a lot of people know what Zoom shirts are. They were everywhere. And what was funny was, after that, the thing that will hurt, was one of the hardest times for me in my life, getting that pulled from me. And on a personal level, I was also breaking up with my very first girlfriend. So which we were together for 5 years.
So you're getting kicked out of the company that you started, and you're breaking up with your first girlfriend.
Yeah.
So
dude,
there's a lot going on for you emotionally.
Yeah, and and this podcast can handle these kinds of things, right? So yeah, no, I was done, man. I was like, I've never felt like I never wanted to wake up before. That was the way, and it was like that. And I don't want to be too dramatic, but that is the truth. And I was like, dude,
that's how you felt. That's how you felt.
Yeah, and then, but what was great about getting kicked out of that company had me start my own.
Sure.
And if that
Without
never
a
happened,
partner?
Yeah, AutoCannon was always all me, and it's always has been on me. Mm-hmm. So then I ended up launching AutoCannon, and at the time I didn't know that was what needed to happen, but it did, and I was happy about that. But what was interesting was, as I was competing and AutoCannon started to grow, apparel and tuner culture started to get really big. And if you even look in Fast and the Furious 1, all our apparel's in there. You could see AutoCannon clothing all up in that movie. And especially, like, you'll see one of my guys, Memo, who's Mr. GSX on Instagram. You'll see him in there standing next to Vin Diesel with an AutoCannon shirt during one of that famous first street race scene at the end where he's clowning Paul Walker. And, so we got our product placed in the first Fast and the Furious. And the tuner industry started blowing up. And so as it started blowing up, we started getting our apparel and AutoCannon apparel almost everywhere. Our first major account was Miller's Outpost, which ended up becoming Anchor Blue.
Yep.
And then we ended up in literally like every major department store, from like Sears to JC to Bloomingdale's. And I created different brands for each of the different tiers of market, because they didn't want to compete with each other, right?
Sure.
They wanted their own stuff. So we did. And we did millions. And we were very quietly one of the biggest, tuner companies in the tuner industry at the time, and no one knew. It was just T-shirts, right? And so, and
I was in Miller's Outpost buying Beyond baggy jeans. You remember that? I was in Miller's Outpost. Let me get those Beyond baggies. All right, to go with my Jinko collection.
Exactly, Jinko. Yeah. Oh my God! All right, well, I already know how I'm gonna draw your character now.
No, I don't dress like that anymore. But it was so much fun back then, man.
Yeah,
but I remember seeing it. I remember seeing it everywhere. Interestingly enough, I actually have never cared for the Fast and the Furious movie franchise.
Right.
I think some people find that extremely odd, because it's to most people, it's a very ingrained part of like their, I guess you would say their
history.
Their history, right?
Yeah. And not ours.
It's not ours. No, I mean, like, I get it. Like, especially the first one is a cult classic, right? But I was so frustrated by. Yep. I knew that it was going to create growth inevitably as far as an industry, right?
Yeah,
but
and it did.
I also saw the behavior of
Yep.
everyone as they left the theater. I was young. I walk out of the theater and I'm seeing people grab their mom's vans and peel out, and people almost crash,
Yeah.
and everyone was
Yeah.
racing. And I even at that young age, I remember looking and I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem.
Yep. Yeah.
And it never stopped, and it just got worse. So I was so upset with the effect that that movie had on like the streets that
Yeah.
I boycotted it and did not watch an FNF movie till 7.
See, I got you beat on that because dude, I feel you 100%. And because this was our passion, this is the thing we loved, and it was, I don't want to knock Fast and Furious. It also did some good,
Oh
but
no, for sure, for sure, yeah.
but it's also it wasn't we weren't accurately represented, and the culture was just basically used to launch that film.
Yeah, and Hollywood does what Hollywood does.
Yeah, and they did, and so so for us that were there way before FNF, it was not. I remember just watching it and going, oh man,
Yeah.
I was sad about it, and especially since I directed my own film, not directed, but executive produced my own film called The Last Race, right? And
sure.
That was something we did, and we could talk about that later. But I also made a film right at the time that Fast and the Furious 1 came out. And I got you beat. Where I say that is because I haven't watched any other Fast and the Furious film. I think except, wait, was 7? Which one was the last one where Paul Walker died?
That's
right after
7.
Paul Walker died?
That's the one that I watched.
Then me and you are the same. Then I only watched it because Paul Walker died, and I wanted to see that, that whole thing. So me and you, yeah. So you're the same. I haven't watched any other one. It's funny. Everyone's like, "Good, Dennis, you still got to watch Tokyo Drift, though. That one was actually decent." I'm like, "Okay."
No, it's not. I've seen about 32 minutes of it, and I was like, "Absolutely not." I just never watched the rest of it.
So,
but Dennis, that was just the jeans and like the era of bagginess and your pants covering your shoes and all that stuff. Remember Housers and Breakers?
Oh my God, yeah, dude.
Yeah. But the point is that's when you have these. You set up these different tiers. You're successful. You're doing all these different brands. And then, but what happened to them? Like, it hit its peak and it was part of the culture. But why would you be able to look back and say that it faded out?
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, it was really awesome what happened when I came from so just kind of backtracking. I went from high school, I never went to college.
Okay.
So I decided to go straight into entrepreneurship, business, comic book, working for myself, doing all of that stuff.
And that would have been what year? 90 what?
Like I said, 91, 92, 93,
so right then,
all around those areas, those early 90s. Yes.
Yeah.
I was already devoted. That's why my mom was panicking. She's like, dude, you're not going to college? Yeah. I'm like, Mom, give me one more year. Give me one more year. Give me another couple months. I was begging, like, I'll make it.
Sure.
And I just believed in something. And, spoiler alert, I end up becoming, I went from trying to sell my shirts out of a van.
Sure.
Right? Which I did. I literally sold my shirts out of a van. It was a Volkswagen van. I was embarrassed to drive. It was my dad's. But, that's the only thing that would fit all the shirts from my printer. And then went from that, my first, and I got to give them props, my first accounts were 2 tuner shops. You probably know these. Dynamic Autosport. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie, for believing in me. And also Pan Autosport with here in National City.
Yep.
Thank you for believing in me.
Huge.
Two OGs.
Yeah, Pan is huge in San Diego area for years, man.
Forever. He's never quit. Thomas has never quit, but it was, and I appreciated both of them. I got some funny stories here. I went to Eddie over at Dynamic.
Yep.
He knew me, but we didn't know each other.
For sure.
But the funny story was the way that I pulled this off, and I think if he's listening now, he would laugh. I went into Dynamic Autosport going, shoot, man, I don't have any money to make the shirts, but I have designs. So I literally put designs on an 8.5 by 8 by 10, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I showed them to him.
Yes.
And I'm like, how many would you like to order, right? Basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, those look pretty cool. And he was a little bit, skeptical. But he's like, yeah, I said, I kind of need you to grab quite a few of these if you want them here. And basically I needed him to order something kind of ludicrous at the time, which I think was close to 200, 300 units.
Sure.
And I was like, and he's like, he finally said, okay. And when he said, okay, I said, All right. I kind of acted like the shirts existed in the warehouse
Sure.
already. And I said, could you give me a 50% deposit?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that was another negotiation. He finally says yes, right? And you know what I'm doing with that 50%.
You're making the
I'm
product
going
that's supposed to
to go make
already
this.
exist.
Yeah,
Yep.
dude.
Yep.
So, uh, and then the funniest part was like, when he finally agreed, and I think he actually made a call to Mike Ferrara over at Turbo
Uh-huh.
Magazine. He goes, dude, do we trust this dude? Because he's about to ask me for thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Um, when he actually asked me, so who do I make the check out to?
What did you say?
I didn't have a company name, so I had to give it to me personally. Can you put my personal name on the check?
Dude, I'm so surprised that Eddie did it, man. Well, because at least he was able to call Mike and get like a
I
reference.
guess.
But if he
I
didn't, dude, it'd
guess.
be like, "Hi, person I just met. Do you want me to write a personal check to?"
And I did, dude. And he did. But what he did there with his trust, and I did obviously deliver, so I did not screw him. And he did sell those shirts.
Yeah.
And he made money. Was like him trusting this dude, this basically teenager at the time. I think I was a teenager at the time. Skinny, didn't know me. That check made it everything. All of this happened, and this conversation happened by this point, right? And so, yeah, ended up making the shirts. I told him it would take 2 weeks to deliver. For some crazy reason, even though they're in the warehouse, it's going to take me 2 weeks to deliver. Ended up printing the shirts, and I ended up delivering to him. And it was a lot of work. It was very hard. And I also split the order between them and Pan, so I had enough volume to actually print the shirts, because printers won't print without a minimum volume, right?
Sure.
So here I am, and I did that. That was my very first thing. So I went from that to walking into, oh, I have to tell you this story. Never mind. I was trying to kind of cut through this. Obviously, a lot
No
of things.
need. Continue at a
All
slow
right.
pace.
So my little shenanigans continued to grow the business.
Yep.
I end up, my first account was Miller's Outpost, right? Okay, how did I get into Miller's Outpost? Well, my printer, for some reason, had the contact information for the buyer at Miller's Outpost. And they're like, I think it'll sell here. I know nothing about business at this point, okay? I know how to print a shirt, barely. I know how to print a shirt. I didn't know about business. I didn't have a business account. I didn't have any of that stuff, right?
Sure.
So, so here I am trying to go tackle the giants and get into a mass retailer. And I think at the time had 300, 400 locations, I think, on the West Coast. So they weren't a small deal. And they have a hub out in Ontario, and that's where the hub was. And so I randomly called, another leap of faith. I called, left them a message. I forgot what message it was, but they called me back. I was like, what the? And I just went with it.
Yeah.
So here's the funny part where I kind of continued the shenanigans. So here I come. Now I've got printed shirts. Yeah, I've got samples, right?
Yes.
So at least I look sort of real.
Yes.
And I add a few more designs. I come into this first meeting. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to expect. And this is kind of a really integral part of the story. I had my stepdad, who had a different last name than me, doesn't look like me, come in acting like he's my business.
No, you did not.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Like he was part of this company and trying to make it feel like we had something more established than we did. And kind of give you a backstory, we hated each other at the time, but he was willing to do this for me. So if my dad ever hears this, thank you, Dad, for doing this. But I can't even believe that I had the balls to even ask him to do it, because we did not talk to each other. But he was willing to step up and come up, and we literally went to Miller's Outpost together, acting like there was a company that didn't exist, trying to see what if we can get an order. And so we sit down, and how it is when you try to do with department stores is you have to talk to a buyer, and a buyer is that person that's in charge of that floor. So there's a person that's usually in charge of all the T-shirts. They have buying power. They have a certain budget, and they need to make sure they put good stuff on the shelves. So when we sit down, and Miller's Outpost at the time, their money maker was the T-shirt wall. It was huge. They were doing millions and millions and millions, right? And so I sat down.
I had to pass it to get to my Beyond baggy jeans.
Yeah, dude, you could not walk out without a shirt pretty much from Miller's Outpost. And so we sit down in a small room, no windows, that very, very corporate feeling. Oh, actually, before we ever get there, we wait in the lobby for like 30 minutes. There's all there is in a front door, security, locked, a big, massive Levi's on the wall, and a phone with no instructions. So
Interesting.
I had the extension, so I called it, and they said, just wait for us. They wait, and I remember waiting, and it felt forever, and it was quite a long time. End up in a room, like I said, no walls, no walls and no windows, and we sit in, and they're like, okay, what do you got? And I actually show them, and they're kind of like, looking me up and down, kind of weighing me, and they're like, I could tell they knew I was BSing,
Okay.
but they loved the designs.
Okay.
And this was really cool too. Another stroke of generosity was they looked at me and they go, and they were asking me these like sort of these questions that were leading, but also like giving me an opportunity to tell them I don't really have the capability of producing all of it.
Yeah.
and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So they're being very gentle and kind, and I was still just trying to play along. Anyways, long story short.
So you are keeping a straight face, trying to deliver it also.
Yeah, I'm
sure.
like I'm full in, dude. At this point, I can't mess this up, and my dad's right here, right?
Yeah.
So then all it took was one question, and the guy looks at me, Brian. His name was Brian too. Wow,
Interesting.
The other guy, he looks at me and goes, "So, okay, well, this is interesting." And he goes, they basically said, "So, do you have a garment license?" And I'm like, I look at my dad. I'm like, what what is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I actually decided to be honest. And I'm like, no, we don't.
Yes.
And they're like, because we can't put in an order unless you have one. And he walks out. I'm like, oh, shoot.
Oh, so he said that and then just walked out.
And I'm like, I look at my dad and I said, we totally screwed up. Like, here I go. I wasted their time. It felt like a movie,
Yeah.
And they were already talking about putting an order in, and we were negotiating numbers and everything. It was kind of crazy. I was making stuff up, dude. Sure. I was like, yeah, these will be $750 if you buy like this many.
Yeah.
He comes back. He comes back though. You know what's cool? Brian comes back in and he gives me paperwork for an application for a garment license. And he goes, Dennis, we love your designs. Get this all straightened out. The moment you get them straightened out, come back and we'll give you an order. I was like, what? So I walked out of there like, what? And it took me 2 months to get a garment license. And they followed up.
Sure.
And they came through. And they made a first order was somewhere close to $30,000. And that was huge to me back then. That was the biggest thing I ever.
Absolutely.
And that was the beginning of really kind of getting more professional. And I did straighten myself out and started to do more business. And that was the beginning. And then from there, like I said earlier, the thing just grew. We did our first
What
million.
year was that? What year did you get the garment license?
What year was that? 97. Dude, I'm being honest when I can barely remember.
Sure.
Was it 96, 90, 97, 98? It's all around the same time. Like the late 90s,
late 90s. That's when you get the garment license because Brian, not Brian at the Acura dealership, but the second Brian at Miller's Outpost says, let us know when you get this official legality, out of the way, and we'll order it. And that's when it started. And then how long did it take you to do the first million in sales?
From that point on, it was pretty, I want to say, quote unquote, quick. I'm feeling like I think it was only less than three years. I think it was a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
very cool, man.
Yeah. And then it just kept growing. And so answering your question later was the thing just exploded. And the most interesting part about exploding for me on a personal level was our number one competition was my first and original brand.
Zoom.
Yes. So they were eating my lunch. And, if you want to talk about stuff that you have to go through to really, the stuff that we go through, right? That makes us who we are. That was one of the toughest things I ever had to deal with, was looking at and competing with my own brand that I knew was mine. And I decided, because back then I was like, man, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to sue them. I'm not going to try to take it back. I'm not trying to do any of that stuff. And I'm just going to go and I'm going to be successful no matter what. And just kind of wish him well and move on. because I knew that I know, because he was actually not a tuner at all. Didn't know anything about the cars, none of it. He was just happened to be really good at drawing and doing great. He did car designs that were the t-shirt designs that were good for department stores and stuff.
Sure.
But he wasn't part of the culture at all, and that's not a knock on him. It's just that was true. And I always knew that we always had the advantage because we were culture. And that's what mattered to me anyway. And whether I made $100, 100,000, or $1 million, I wanted to make sure I was authentic and part of and culture, And so it was one of the craziest things to compete with him, like literally from buyer to buyer, trying to compete for dollars and trying to make my way and keeping myself together while all of that was happening. It wasn't easy, man. And
so I have a question. This is something that's fascinating to me. So the term or the figure of speech, a stroke of luck, or I got lucky, something synonymous like that. That's a very common thing that people say, right? But I'm actually curious. Do you literally believe in luck? Meaning, when these things happen for you at this younger age, with all of this inexperience, pulling the low, not even low key, like the high key scam with your stepdad and coming in there and everything. Like, the question really is do you believe, like when you say it was a stroke of luck, is that a figure of speech, or do you mean like I don't know how to attribute to it anything other than luck for it to have happened, or do you think there was something else?
Oh, okay. So I don't know if I did say stroke of luck. Cool, I'm maybe using the term. Do I believe in luck? So here's my thing on luck when it comes to entrepreneurship. Okay?
Yes.
So luck is what? What is luck? What is luck? And I actually have thought about this a lot. Luck is essentially being in the right place at the right time, right?
Okay.
When you're in the right place at the right time, lucky, you got lucky. Like, something happened, something came at you, something was delivered to you, something like happened to you, you happened to something, like, and it just was perfect timing, right? So you're in the right place at the right time is luck. And so who put you there? And that's why I'm like, I don't like to give it all to quote unquote what most people traditionally call luck. But I put myself there. If I didn't do the hustle, if I didn't do the thing, if you didn't do the thing, if you didn't do the hustle, you never get lucky. And so no matter what, you are where you are, and what you're doing and the choices you make end up developing into what ends up happening after the fact. And so, for me personally, I mean, I like the word, I like the romantic thought of luck, where you just kind of like things happen and like maybe God blesses you or whatever. And that's cool too. But kind of from the entrepreneurial perspective, I don't think any of these guys, in my opinion, anybody that's been really successful has ever been really just lucky.
I'm glad that you bring you bring it up like that, and that's the reason why I asked you, because there is a tendency to be a recurring kind of perspective or answer to that type of question. It may not be verbatim, but there's something about that. And the first thing that you said was, well, what is luck? And that step to answering really any major question, but that specific question is crucial, because you ask other people and people chalk up everything, good and bad, that happens to them or things that they observe happening to other people, and people really chalk it up to luck or bad luck. Good luck, bad luck, but it's luck. And nowadays people use the word karma more than luck. People say, oh, if something bad happened, if Dennis didn't get that deal, that must have been karma. Right. And this is where I find those concepts very dangerous, because it ends up creating a victim mentality. Because if you don't have that drive, if you don't have the vision, and which would end up being how you got to where you were, right? Kind of like what you just said. You can have all the luck in the world, but the other saying is chance favors the prepared mind. Okay. So you could have gotten, by stroke of luck, your t-shirt printer had the contact for Miller's Outpost, but if you didn't have some type of plan and some type of like, hey stepdad, I hate you, you hate me, but do you want to be my business partner for fate real quick? Okay, like that's what I'm saying. Like there's a reason that some people can get past ruts or not even ruts, major hurdles in life. It isn't and it's because they don't say, man, I'm really unlucky.
Yeah.
And conversely, they don't say, man, I'm doing well, I'm really lucky. It's because they are working towards something. And then, like you said, it may have been a chance moment, but you put yourself there. So what do you do when that moment arrives?
Exactly.
And so that's
Yep.
really cool, man. So you get to this point, you have this terrible experience in life where on a business level you get outed from your own company, and within the same time of life, your first girlfriend that you were totally in love with,
Yep.
it doesn't
that
work
that whole
out.
story, it literally is that whole story, right?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and trust me. I mean, any dude in here who's listening and they're just like, oh, man, I've never felt love before. Shut up. You know what it's like to be totally heartbroken when a girl that you want doesn't want you back. Blah blah blah. So you have those happening within the same time of life. That's
Yep.
hard. But instead of being like, I'm gonna eat 16 Twinkies and just be at home and maybe like scribble on a napkin, you kept going.
Yeah.
You kept going, and look what it turned into. So you get all these things turn into 2 to 3 years, $1 million in sales, and it keeps growing. But the Black Integra is there with you during this time.
That's a good way to put it,
And
huh?
how does yeah, man, the Black Integra got you to Miller's Outpost, man.
Yeah, dude, all
So
of it.
how
Yeah.
did you? So how did it go from all of the effort and energy and nights and drawing and artistic output to get this going? The shirts and the designs. How did you also end up doing the car, the turbo kit, and Turbo Magazine?
Cool. All right, I'll get at that. I just want to make sure I finish my. I kind of went off point a little bit because you asked me an earlier question,
Yeah.
and so we ended up doing the Miller's Outpost, growing, getting into all the major department stores. I end up becoming, even without ever going to college, an SBA Young Entrepreneur of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I never took a loan, never took an SBA loan or any of that stuff. And I remember when I took the award, they told me not to say I didn't go to college and I never had an SBA loan.
Right. Right.
And I also speak at the California International Business University. I actually did that this morning on
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship and crowdfunding and whatnot. So there's kind of this whole crazy thing. But it blew up. I had my own warehouse. Eventually went from me in a bedroom to having my own warehouse. Seriously, we had a warehouse full of T-shirts and shipping department. I had two different a warehouse separate of the office, salaries, all this stuff happening when everything was blowing up. Yeah, you asked me where it ended, and when the economy fell apart.
Yeah.
That's what I've never been in that situation in my life, and the car thing died. When the economy was dropping, people stopped doing car stuff.
Sure.
Everybody, we went through this in this industry. I think you remember this, and all of that blow up after Fast and the Furious with all kind of the guys that came in that were kind of looky loos essentially, but to help fund our industry with lots of body kits and tail lights and all these other things that we bought.
Sure. Yeah.
Everything fell apart, right? And then we also couldn't recover because we had our retailers. And people that purchased from us couldn't pay us. And so it all just steamrolled. And we're in the middle of this whole Corona thing right now. So you guys are seeing the effect of what happens when economies drop. People are going to get hit. And we were part of that. And so I had to stop. That was one of the things. And that's kind of, I want to go into the next part that you were asking me about right now. But just to give you that whole entire story right there. And the lucky thing with all of this, I was able to keep it alive in the sense that I still own AutoCannon and Max Boost and all the things, and it's all still mine. And I never lost any of it. I just had to shut things down, and I did for a long time. And that's why this whole Max Boost reboost is a big deal. So moving on to your next question was you asked about the car, right? And so
yeah, exactly. I mean,
yeah.
it's you touched on the economy right now because there's a lot of younger people who they're just simply not old enough to remember that particular economic slump, and so they're just not going to really know. And right now is their first time being old enough for it to have a very real effect, right? So you have albeit a virus and not, the causes from back then. But it's a very real experience for some people. But once again, you didn't lose it. It's a good point to bring up. You didn't lose it. You had to let it, flow with the times.
Yeah, it flew.
And then but that gave you the opportunity to put time into the car.
A little bit. I mean, so yeah, we want to start talking about cars right now. I have a very, I mean, your work is insane. It's a level I've never been to. I've never tried.
I see.
I'm a very simple dude when it comes to cars. So let's talk about me and cars. First off, I just want to say I respect anybody in the car tuner industry, whether you're into V8s, European, lowriders, whatever. I think, car culture is car culture. Love what you love, do your thing, your passion, whatever. I tried to do my best not to judge it, but I will make fun of you in Max Boost, right? So that's kind of it. But my personal angle on cars is what's most important to me on cars is the driving. So I love basically the weaponry of cars, meaning cars and how they are used to just be amazing mechanical machines. And that's why I drive on racetracks. That's why I love track driving. I do. A lot of people don't, some people don't know this. They're surprised. They thought all I did was draw comics. And I'm like, no, I actually was one of the first in our tuner scene back in the early 2000s, late 90s. No one was racing on racetracks. So this was very new. There was no time attack or any of this kind of stuff. And I remember jumping in. I was one of the earlier guys from the street racing crowd, basically, trying to jump into this mainly, I guess if it's okay for me to say, mainly white, rich, people sport where there was mainly, Camaros, Mustangs, and whatnot. But you ain't seeing Hondas and Civics and stuff. Not so much. Not on the track in the way that we do today. And so when I first started doing the driving, my brain's kind of going in two different directions. I'll kind of give you the background. I started off as a street racer, thought I was the king of all street racers, right? And I literally, I think back in the day, used to have these thing called reputations. And here in San Diego, I had one. And I got to give shout out to my original street racing team, Ground Zero. We were definitely troublemakers. So I first started street racing, did the whole midnight everything, then did a lot of drag racing, went to Terminal Island Raceway, Brotherhood Raceway, every Saturday. Used to race up here, up there with you guys and all that. And then I even won a Battle of the Imports in my bracket. So I love drag racing.
Man, that first test drive that Brian at the Acura dealership, he had you hooked, man.
Done, dude.
White RS.
I don't mess around, man. As soon as I get into something and I love something, I go all the way. And so this is a version of all the way for me. And then from there, from going into drag racing and street racing, we got successful. Just kept doing the thing. Had autocannon, had Max Boost, and I started working more, right? And so I didn't get to play as much.
Sure.
But one of the things that I actually got to get with all my hard work was an Acura Nsx. Mm-hmm. So I actually bought myself an Nsx, and it was the one I wanted, a 91.
Okay.
Black top, red, the whole thing, and I actually bought one. People were freaking out, and I bought it, paid it off fast, and what I did with that was I watched a series. Or I heard about a series online for Doug Hayashi called the NSX Files. And they were VHS tapes you would order. Yeah. You could pick up the phone, you call, Doug would answer the phone, he'd take your order, you send him a check, or I think you could have gave him a credit card at the time, but he would send you a copy on a VHS tape. Yep. And so what was crazy was, he'd bring this car to the racetrack, NSX. And I went, what? You could bring a car to the racetrack and all you need is a helmet? I didn't know that at the time. Nobody knew that at the time. People weren't racing on racetracks. We were stupid and just running around the streets.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I had an NSX, and that's what connected me. So here I am, king of the street racers, thinking I'm all badass, thinking I'm fast on the street. And I'm like, let me go to the racetrack, have some fun, show some people up, whatever. Dude, I went to this racetrack, and I got my ass handed to me by every car out there. Anything from a Miata to a whatever. And I'll never forget it. There was a hatchback Civic. and an RSX that just ate me and it was embarrassing. It was
Sure.
like, here I am in an NSX thinking I was badass. And dude, I used to represent in street racing. I used to beat lots of things, and I used to, and then here I am now. All of a sudden, I'm a really small fish in a very big pond, and I'm like, oh man. And I remember that moment, dude. I remember that moment going, huh. I was so embarrassed. I was like, it's either this is an opportunity for me right now to suck it up and decide that I'm going to learn how to drive, or go back to my little pond and be big fish over there. And I said, you know what, man, dude, I got to learn. I decided to learn how to drive.
Okay, so you ate your humble pie and then decided to learn how to drive.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And I went back, and one of my first instructors, this is a funny story, is one of my first instructors. I went to I think it was a NASA event. My first instructor from Driving Concepts International was a guy named David Misi, and he was an ex-Playboy photographer, which I thought was hilarious. Okay. And he let me know how much I did not know how to drive in that first weekend, and I didn't. Bro, it was so funny, and I don't want to bore everybody with the mechanics of it, but man, I did not know what I was doing. And there's a lot of people that think they know what they're doing, but they don't as soon as you put them in a track situation. And so yeah, and then I just got passionate about wanting to learn how to be quick. And so eventually I ended up getting pretty quick. I got really mature about it. I stopped street racing. I'm the opposite now. I'm a total advocate of driving on the track, not street racing or doing any of that stuff. And then I eventually got asked to be an instructor, and I've been instructing for Driving Concepts International, BMW CCA. I've done an event, and then eventually just ended up becoming an instructor with NASA. And then I got into wheel-to-wheel racing, and won some stuff, raced the 25 hours in the Endless EG Civic from San Higashi, built a race car, my first Team SGR autocannon car. We got second in the Honda Challenge Championship, and I was a Rookie of the Year.
I remember that car.
Yeah, I ended up instructing the wheel-to-wheel racing certification program. And then today, right now, I'm actually one of the 2 lead classroom instructors for NASA Pro Racing SoCal. So, yeah.
That segue is really cool, man, to go from the street
to... I kind of segged.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think it's great to go from... It's just another example of growth and maturity. The street, the streets and everything like that. I had friends, if you remember Race Legal.
Of course, yeah, that's man. Big time.
Exactly. So I had people that worked there, and I was kind of in tune to the push to get people to be more focused and instructed and safe and organized, and people going from the streets to Qualcomm Stadium to do some type of organized runs and or whether they were going to Verona or anything like that. So the Race Legal thing was pretty cool, and so that kind of triggered that whole memory all the way back then, and hearing you go from that humble pie when you went out there with an NSX, but you turned it around and you chose to learn, and then you got to the point where you got good and better, and now you instruct and help other people get better. So that's great.
Yeah, that's one of my passions with Max Boost and autocannon is to inspire people to come to the track. It's an amazing experience. And there's also autocrossing. I forgot to mention that, but I also did that as well. And I actually did. And one of the funniest moments was when I went to a Porsche Club event. I bought my dad a Porsche Boxster S when I was young, when we were successful. And the thing when I told him when I bought it, I was like, oh, after we hated each other and now like each other, I offered him a car. And one of his dream cars was a Porsche. And so I said, here's the deal. I said, as long as you let me race it a few times. And so autocrossed it. I went to 3 Porsche Club events. I was definitely not invited. But did 3 events, 3 first places, and I was like, and they were not happy about it. They thought, and I was like, I'm going back to the racetrack, dude. This is a
little Filipino kid outdoing other people in Porsche is not going to go over.
And mine was completely stock. So, anyways, the reason why I went through all of that, was to go back to the original question, was how am I, was trying to talk about where I am with cars. Yeah. So function is huge for me. That's why I went through all of that. Function's a big part of it. And not saying that I don't love like builds that are just amazing, like, you know, cars that aren't necessarily, you know, basically hard parked or whatever. Some of those are just absolutely fascinating to me. But I tend to lean towards like J-spec cars, where,
Yeah,
you
it's a
know, there's still
classic,
some,
timeless, functional, kind
yeah,
of style.
yeah, yeah, where you drive, just drivability is still there. You can still drive on the street, driving on the racetrack still has some of the interior in it. Roll bar, safety. It's basically a track weapon. You could still drive, you know, to the mall and back or wherever you're going. And that's basically how I have one of my other current cars is a E46 M3,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how that car's built right now.
Yeah, those are man. I have a lot of friends that have them. They're such fun cars.
Yeah, money pit, but yeah.
So that's one of the current cars. I mean, so what's the stable looking like right now?
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
here's it. Okay, so we got some super
Mm-hmm.
secret projects.
Okay.
Have not actually spoken about a few of them. Um, maybe I should debut it here on one
All
of them here.
right.
Oh, okay, let's do
Okay.
this.
Yep.
Let me do this. I'm gonna do this. I think Sam's gonna trip out, but there's no visuals to this, so you know, at least we'll be able to do a visual one maybe on our own. But I'll give you one of the projects that's huge that we have not talked about at all, and it's super secret.
Okay.
But I'll talk about some of the cars that we got. Number one is I just mentioned that E46 M3. It's red. Got on sitting on Titan 7 wheels, Falcon 615 tires. Oh, just to talk about builds, I keep them very simple.
Sure.
Suspension, tires, and I literally have zero power mods. None. Not even an exhaust or an intake. Not even a filter. So it's all about driving it on the track and having 100% reliability.
Sure.
And so it's very simple. I have, you know, before I even do power mods, all my bushings are changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reliability on the racetrack, you know, changing pulleys and all these other things just to make sure that it's reliable. So reliability is first for me. And I try to do the most that I can on a racetrack with as little as possible in terms of power. So, and brake pads, that's about it.
Sure.
So
Sure.
with
Sure.
all the Sparco safety stuff, and running a Hans and all that. So there's that. So that's the E46 M3 red. And let's see what I want to talk about. The new car is actually in the Max Boost Volume 2 video. So
Okay.
I have a car co-owned with Dan Wilson, who's my boy from AutoCannon days. And that car, that white car that's in the video, I've never told anybody this yet, but that's going to eventually become a green Civic hatchback. So it is an EK.
Mm-hmm.
It is an EK Type R motor, barred, so it's street legal, which I think is amazing. And with a B18 C5 in it. So we're going to take that car and take it to another level. It currently resides not at my house. It's at Elite Finish Detail at the auto salon here in Miramar.
Okay.
It's sitting in that showroom right now. And so we're going to take that and we're going to build a Max Boost car out of that. So that's going to be
cool.
a big thing. And I haven't said that officially yet, actually. That's one other thing. I have another secret project. I'm actually not going to say what it is, but there's a secret project we're doing with Team Scoundrels, which is a drift team. So go figure what kind of car it might be. But there's a secret project out there. There's actually a car existing. It's actually sitting in their garage, and it is. I bought it sight unseen. It is under wraps right now. So we're hiding that car. So there's that. But the one that I was going to debut here right now, which I think is kind of crazy, is very, very few people know about it. Obviously, some of our sponsors know about it. Sam Rothschild was originally my fabricator for my very first car, race car. He built the roll cage, and he has a talent for it. And I told him, I said, dude, you're my crew chief now. You're my chief fabricator now. But I'm telling you, you can launch your own business one day and you can be successful. And fast forward, he's built a lot of race cars. He's built Busy's cars. That busy, yes, that busy, like the center seat Porsche and all that kind of stuff. He's done tons of race cars that are like, for example, for NASA. And he's built this business. And one day we're like, why don't we build a car from scratch? So we have a car that I designed the exterior of. He designed the inside of it. But we're literally building from scratch, tubular all the way up. And it's our dream is to have a car company. I know,
Okay.
nutty,
No,
total
no.
shot
So
in the dark,
right
total
now
shot
you
in the
have a
dark.
bespoke car. He's doing the geometry and the insides. You
Yeah,
design the outside, and it's going to be your presentation to the world. And you want to start a car company. I like it.
it's nuts. So the first time I've ever said that to anybody. So me and him, we have this dream of starting a car company with this car. And right now, the car is going to be a non-street legal car. This is just a car for us to kind of play with our ideas.
Sure.
And this car company is going to be called Autocannon. So,
Yes.
and this car is called the AC 100, and it is absolutely beast. It is already almost, the frame is complete. It is about to sit on its own on four wheels within probably the next 4 weeks. The motor's in it, all of it's all together. I've got pictures. It's sitting in Riverside right now. That's been worked on for the last 2 years,
Can
and we're
you
gonna go do
share
that.
with us the power plant you've decided to use?
I'll say
Do
this:
it.
you already know what brand we probably are running with. We're both Honda fans,
Uh-huh.
100% Honda fans. So we've got a Honda power plant in it. So that's
I
that's about all I
see.
can say.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, and
Do you have a
so
date that you want to finish it and debut to the world by?
we want it in SEMA.
This
So
this coming SEMA.
this coming SEMA, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's our goal.
I see.
Aside from Corona and all that, I don't know what's going to happen with all that. That is our
Sure.
goal. SEMA. So wicked. It's it's again, yeah, we can't. We appreciate our, the people that helped us. Like, it's gonna have a street flavor to it still. So it's like, again, Titan 7 is really tight with us. So it's got Titan 7 wheels on it, but it's my design. The body's like mine, and it's gonna
Sure.
be really hard to do. But we're getting it. We're handling the most of the functional stuff first, and then draping a body on it after.
Yeah.
But it'll be the first time we ever did it. And my goal at the end of the day, since I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, what I would love to do, my dream with that car is two things. They're very simple to me. My dream with that car is, number one, sitting in it. I envision myself at Button Willow, strapping into this thing,
Okay.
starting the car, putting it in gear, and moving forward. That
Yes.
moment is going to be like something I've always wanted. Moving
Yes.
and driving my own car. That's
Your
so
own car.
crazy.
Very,
That's
very cool.
crazy.
Yeah.
Second is, I would love to have a street legal version of this one day.
Yes.
And one day I want to film this. I want to drive this crazy car down Fifth Avenue in downtown San Diego,
Ah.
ride past my first studio where I created the Autocannon brand name, and
Yes.
point up at it and go, I didn't know at the time that when I came up with the Autocannon brand, that would ever become a car company, and I'm sitting in one right now. I think that's crazy.
Oh
And
yeah.
so those are the two
Absolutely,
things.
man.
Those are the two things I want, and those are the things that drive me and give me chills. And Sam too, obviously, is part of
Dude,
this.
those visualizations, you saying it out loud, putting it out there about making your own car and then your own car company, the different versions of it, the street legal one, the non-street legal one, starting putting it in its first gear and moving forward at Button Willow, what you just described, the scene. I know you can see it in your mind, the
Yep.
lighting, the angle, everything about how you're going to point
100%.
up
Yeah.
at, yeah, it's your original studio. That's the kind of stuff that separates the wishers and the dreamers from the doers, because
Right on.
there's a lot of people who wish, there's a lot of people who dream, but the drop down is exponential to the amount of people that do.
Yep. 100%.
And that's, the you can hear it when you talk. There's always the necessary passion, that emotional driving force is powerful, but that's also the most common thing. You put a bunch of car people in a room, at a show, at a track, and whatever niche of the industry, everyone in there is going to be able to talk your ear off about their car mods, cars, right? The passion is not what's lacking, but the drive, right?
Mm.
You talked about that. That's what drives you. You said that image, those images, those two images are what drive you.
Yeah.
And then in the midst of all of the stuff going on, whether it be economy, this, business partner, that, whatever, you are focused on the end goal. Like nothing can stop you. It's all tied in, the passion, the drive, and the focus, and you've manifested it, you put it out there, the different things that you have accomplished. If you were to have said in 3 years I want to have sold $1 million in t-shirts to the one of the biggest retailers at that time, people would be like, right, Dennis, you know, right. Yeah, I mean, like, I
Yeah.
dig it, man, but right, you know.
Yep,
And you did it,
exactly.
you know what I'm saying, and you've created multiple companies, and even after being outed, you know, from one that you started, which is, you know, a ridiculously painful experience. I had another guest on previously, similar concept, and but it ended up being his family that did it to him.
Oh, even
And
worse.
it was, they were successful, good money, young guy, and his own family pushed him out. And
Mm.
you know, because it was family, you know, no legal action. Similar to you, you're like, I'm not going to do the legal thing. I'm just going to take it on the chin and learn and go in a different direction. And
Good.
both he and you are wildly successful from that restart point of zero, you
Yeah,
know.
from that bad luck.
Yeah, badly. So it's an amazing thing, you know, and so to see the reemergence of those names of which I'm familiar, and in this particular, you know, more current case is Max Boost,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Reboost, you know, Volume 2, the Kickstarter. I mean, I bought it. I got in, and
Oh man, thank you.
no, because but here's the thing, man, because people, a
You
lot
know
of people
somebody though. You
talk.
know somebody gonna take care of you.
But see, but here's the thing, Dennis. People talk, right? Like you,
Yeah.
like, okay, I wrote for the, you know, we talk about magazines. The magazines were part of me as a kid growing up. Very, you were tied into them. It was very, the people who are not old enough to really have any reason to care, right? I don't knock the
Mm.
younger generation, because how could they know or care? They never saw it. It was never a tangible thing that they waited for every 30 days, and it
True.
didn't pave anything for them. They have the internet and everything's a million miles an hour. So I don't knock the younger generation that are like, who cares? Like, print is old and it's slow and it's archaic. And because by today's standards, it is. So I don't really knock them for it. But I ended up reading these magazines and seeing Max Boost, and knowing all these editors as these names and faces and the little thumbnails in the magazine, and when they wrote their editorials and all these different things. And then it turns into where I end up having my cars featured in and then on the covers of them. And then I end up being able to contribute as a journalist. So there's this
Yep.
full kind of evolution. And then, like I said, I couldn't really tell anyone when Max Boost sort of just disappeared. I remember the evolution of the industry and culture where magazines in general of all types started thinning. But all I know is, for the same reason that I don't really remember Max Boost and Autocannon and all that stuff going away, what I do know is that I can see them coming back. And that's
Yeah.
really cool, to be able to not just see it from a distance, but for us to be able to be acquainted. Apparently, you know who I am, I knew who you were, but from, you knew my build, I knew Max Boost. But now to get to this point where we get to have this conversation, and to be able to not just, people talk, man, like, oh, that's really dope. Like, I would love to see that, but they're not putting their money where their mouth is,
Right.
right? I know a
That's
lot
why I
of people
love
that
our
hit me up.
fans right now. Thank
Dude,
you.
that's the thing that's very cool about the concepts of Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Patreon. It allows people to just decide if they want to directly
Yeah.
contribute to something. And you got a lot of people that hit me up, even now, still in 2020. Hey, when is Honda Tuning coming back? Like, why did magazines die? And I'm like,
Right.
well, what was your favorite issue? Like, oh, I didn't subscribe. I just want them to come back. And I'm like, bro, like,
That's true.
you can't be upset that a magazine's gone if you didn't
Yeah.
contribute to it.
Restaurant's not there anymore because you never ate there and paid.
Yeah, I want them to build another one. Okay, it costs millions of dollars to do that. Are you gonna have
Yeah.
dinner there once in a while?
Right. Exactly.
So it's cool to be able to like have this contemporary technological abilities, and putting yourself out there and finding that core group plus new fans,
Yeah.
and to see it kick off. And Volume 2, what did you do? You hit
We're
30,000 in 3 days?
Yeah. No, we're at like $37,000 right now. We
Yes.
launched it on Monday. It's Friday.
Monday. Yeah, there you go. 5 days.
Late Monday. So call it Tuesday. We are now
Yeah.
Friday. We're at like $37,000
Yeah. I mean, I was
in
watching it grow.
orders.
Yeah. I was watching it grow getting the notifications, via email, and then on Instagram, and just seeing, your posts about, oh my goodness, what? And then the next post, wait, what? And then the next post, wait, what? And it just
Yeah,
kept climbing and
no.
climbing. So cool, man.
It's super cool, and it's all because of fans. This is not. I'd like to say there was something else we were doing, but no, the fans were waiting. Max Boost Volume 1 was a hit. They loved it, and I'm a big proponent of making sure you stay connected with the people that take care of you and the people that the fans, the people, your customers. As a business, we talk about that. If you can create real relationship with them, that's how you build your brand. And you take care of people, and so I have a lot of direct connection to me, and we have what we call Max Boost private Facebook group, for example, and I'm in there every day, and people ask me questions or they make comments, and I comment on people, and I say thank you to people when they support what we're doing, when they jump in there, they're like, I'm backer number 300 something, I just got the project, or they have a question, I'm like available. I make myself available, and that's kind of unheard of, for any, when's the last time Nike would ever say anything to you, right?
Right.
But that's I give credit to them. They're the ones who made this 416 backers in this week. We're at 3,600, almost at $37,000 in less than a week, in four and something 5 days. What's different is Volume 1. When we launched Volume 1 the first time, it took us 30 something days to make 40,000. This time we're almost at 40,000 in 5 days.
In 5 days,
so that just shows the power of what you're talking about right now, is when you actually have people that were willing to put down, money where their mouth is, and say, Dennis, we want Volume 2. We love Volume 1. And when you're ready to go, I'm going to be there. And they showed up, dude. It was great. And it's changing my life, man, and my perspective of what's possible, all these fans.
Well, the simplicity of the idea of making yourself available to not robotically or in an automated fashion, but to personally respond to people that have questions and maintain in a very real way that type of relationship. I find it very interesting and sad that is so lost to people in some businesses, because it's just, it's just really, because in the end, it's really just about selling someone something. They don't actually care about fostering this type of relationship. So by you personally responding and maintaining that, it shows from Volume 1 to Volume 2. That type of connection is crucial, and it's one of the reasons why I believe people who do genuinely work to have a relationship with people around them can do better, because it has a connection more so than just, here is a product and a person willing to pay for the product. It's deeper than that. So that's what's really cool about what you're doing, and me seeing that, because at a time when magazines are dying, print is dying, there's different niches that are coming up, some of which make it and some of which don't. And for people to buy something tangible in print versus, I could just get that if you just started a website and if you just had a vlog or a blog, right? Or but they're willing to contribute and have this hard copy, which is amazing, man. And so it's really cool to see you doing this right now.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, what I want to say is, I just have to. It's so humbling to know how, when I came back. So for some of you not know Max Boost, I stopped Max Boost 13 years ago, and it never left my mind. And I got to tell you the story of why I quit in the first place. But aside from that, dude, the fans, people loved Max. They loved Max Boost so deeply. I literally got this message today. I'm going to read it to you. Someone just sent this to me. It goes, "Thank you for the art you created. I've grown up with Import Tuner and always liked the anime manga it had, which was Max Boost. I'm just supporting your cause because you supported our cause in the tuner culture. Thank you again. P.S. I don't know you know how big of an impact you have. We all grew up with your art." And I was like,
it's a beautiful message.
I just literally got that today, man. And I get this all the time, and I appreciate that. And, I don't take credit for that per se, but I also take that in in a way that motivates me to just do more for people like this, and I'm just like, yeah, that gives me reason to get up and to do this hustle, because it is not easy. It's not that easy. Like, yeah, $36,000, $37,000 in 5 days sounds really great and fun, but you know what it took to get there?
Yeah,
Right?
man.
And yeah, staying connected to people, because these are real people on the other side. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about a character, something so amazing about Marvel or Disney or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It, and I know very few people are, not everyone's a comic book artist. But I got to tell you, one of the most amazing things is when someone is so in love with something that you created, and they don't
Okay.
even know you. They
Right.
don't even know you. And I'm like, dude, it ain't about me at all. They love
Yes.
Max. They love, what really, truly they love is the experience they have had, that they created for themselves reading Max Boost. That nostalgia, that all of that, that's them. They created that, and I just happen to have a vehicle that allows them to have those feelings and all that. But that's what every storyteller is, And I just think that's amazing, and it's a huge responsibility. It's an honor. And I think that, touching on like really having that personal connection, I think people know it when they meet me in person. Like, I love meeting original Max Boost fans. When I was at Formula Drift signing at the Falcon booth, when I
Yeah.
was at SEMA at the Honda booth and doing sketches, dude, I'm sitting there busting my ass. I'm tired, but I am signing every single thing I can. We give away literally thousands of comics and posters and whatever, just to say thank you to everybody that
Yep.
has been a fan, or anybody that is open to even taking a look at Max. And I'm there shaking hands. I'm taking pictures. I'm doing the whole thing, and it's to take care of those people that take care of you, that actually make Max Boost is nothing without them. Me by myself in a room with Max Boost is nothing. Like, it requires people like this that just left a message, and the hundreds of people that have backed the project already, and the millions of people that, literally a million people that read Import Tuner magazine.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that type of interaction, that type of connection, it's great to hear you acknowledge the people, because I think it's a very simple concept. And I have observed, as long as I've now been both in front of and behind the scenes, many people have lost that, whether they're jaded by negative activities or business transactions that went sideways, or they've just become, shitty people, because there are people who have just become shitty people. Then there are the people who have not allowed life and in business to jade them, and they still have that type of connection with what the reason was, the people that keep it going, and they view their buyers and backers as people, not as numbers. So
right on.
it's great
Yeah.
to hear you say those things, man. It's good, and those messages. Nobody's gonna an emoji, like if someone just sent you like a thumbs up, okay, that has a certain amount of weight to it. But that message that you just read, someone
Yeah.
telling you thank you, and for doing for our culture, then this is my way of giving back, and all those types of premises, that's a beautiful thing, man, and it's very fulfilling versus just a job, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. I mean, that type of connection and camaraderie is, what I attribute to both myself and a few other people and businesses, where I feel that they still care very much about people on an individual level. So, that's why other than just thinking that it's cool, other than just, getting to know you, other than each of those would have been enough for me to say, all right, it's cool for Max Boost as Max Boost that I used to remember reading in magazines to come back. That would have been enough. Or representation, to see print. Maybe that's almost more philosophical, but to see a print venture
Mm.
do
Yeah.
well, that would have been enough. But when you put the few together, that's why even I was just like, boom, I got the link, click the link in my bio. I clicked the link in the bio. I swiped up on the story, and and instead of just being like, oh, cool, I'm gonna like this photo that I'm tagged in, and that's how I'm gonna quote unquote support it. I put my money where my mouth is. And as you can see, there's a bunch of other people that did it. You're shattering Volume One's record and pace, I should say.
Yeah.
30 days to hit 40,000. Now you're on 5 days and you're at 36,000. I mean, just killing it. And Volume Two is gonna be crazy, man.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's like, and it can, and I'm very grateful. And just for let all of your readers know, Mike, you made such an impact on me that I have a special, that special cover. I've got to talk about that. I invited Mike to be on a special cover that's for influencers and friends of mine. That is a second cover variant for Max Boost Volume 2. And I'm going to put Big Mike and the Lude on that cover of that of the Max Boost Volume 2. And so, I appreciate you and appreciate what you do for our community, our culture, and keeping it real, basically.
Okay,
the best
hold
way
on
I could
now.
put it.
I
What?
don't think did you tell me that? Because I think that I did not know that. I remember us talking about
What are
it
you talking about?
when you came to the IBOC meet, right? When you came to the IBOC meet,
Yeah,
I
dude.
remember having a conversation with you, but I don't remember I remember you mentioning the friends and influencers cover, right?
Yeah.
The part that I don't remember that you just said that kind of tripped me out was not myself, but that you're gonna put myself in the prelude on an alternate cover. Maybe I just flat out missed that part. So that actually just came as a surprise to me too.
Oh, dude, that's cool.
So that's
Well, I
super
hope that's
cool. Maybe
okay
I'm
with you
getting
because
old.
I'm already planning that. So I hope
No,
that's all right.
no, dude, it's a big honor. And the thing about it is that this is an example of a way that by being authentic and actually, providing an actual service that's of use to the community, it ends up being where someone like yourself who's doing this venture would decide that both myself as a character and my build as a staple in the community is worthy of it. Because even if we got along as individuals, that has nothing to do with whether or not you would put me on the cover or the car, right? There has to be a reason and a resume, and authenticity being the reasoning behind everything. That is why it's happening. It isn't just because we're cool, because you're cool with a lot of people. You couldn't make 700 alternate covers,
No.
Yeah,
No,
so
yeah. No, so
so
there's
it's
it's gonna be a big mashup. There's gonna be, I'm gonna put there's other influencers and friends on this. I think it'd just be really fun. It'd be very Max Boost feeling.
yes.
And there's only a very few amount of little bit of real estate on there, and I happen to have some for you. So as long as
Dude,
you're okay with it, I think it'll be really cool for you and your readers, your listeners,
listeners,
and
look,
everybody else. Yeah.
very, very cool. It is okay with me. It's an honor. I mean, I remember the character part of myself. I just flat out did not catch the car part. So that's a very cool surprise. When does it hit for as far as all of the backers getting theirs?
Yeah, it's going to be, we're predicting, hopefully, and again, Corona,
Sure.
is hopefully we can get things shipped and landed sometime, probably sometime in August. So
Okay.
it's going to take a minute. And then I still got to
Sure.
draw
Sure.
this cover and finish it up. And I'm going to be doing that over the next few weeks. And I'm going to share with you some videos, some photos and stuff of me doing your lewd and you as a character. So if you want to share it with your friends, you can. But I want to show you kind of like the whole entire process that I do, and I think you get a kick out of it.
Yeah, you know what? Absolutely, man. And the other thing that we can do is we'll do a couple of joint lives on Instagram, and we'll kind of
Yeah,
have a
there you go.
conversation with the people. And this podcast, when we talk, like I said, when we talked at IBOC, well, forget IBOC. When I was hosting the IBOC meet, when I saw you at SEMA, right?
Mm.
The past SEMA,
Yeah,
we talked
original
there.
SEMA.
Yeah, and I got the other issue. It's still in my room. Where we talked there, and you signed it, and we took a photo together, and just seeing that resurgence, and then it evolving to, half a year later,
Yep.
Volume 2. Now the friends and influencers cover, you coming to the IBOC meet, and then us having that conversation, which I do remember, but I missed one major component, and that's so it was super super big surprise today. So ta-da! So that's really
Yeah.
cool, man. Okay,
Uh,
so August, we're hoping for August based on obviously the global interesting circumstances,
yeah.
but Volume 2 to potentially land and have all of the backers have their tangible hard copies by around August. Okay,
Yep.
so that is a beautiful thing. Now, on a side note, I'm wondering, amongst all of the cars that you have, let's
Oh.
go with all the cars that you have ever driven, not
Oh my
owned,
God.
driven, whether it be in the context of uh, street racing, NASA, SCCA, autocrossing, um, anything, right? Any car you've ever driven,
Oh, good
one car.
question. Here we
What
come.
is the best car, your favorite car you have ever driven?
Okay, so I got I'm sorry, I don't have one answer for this, dude. But let me go.
It's okay.
Let me go one. I'm gonna go one.
One.
Okay, so
Go.
well, for right now, I would say my favorite car ever driven on the track is still my original Integra GSR.
Your GSR.
Because of just the history of it. And it got stolen twice. It didn't survive the second time, so I don't even own it. I wish I still had that car.
Sure.
So that's the car that like has my history in it. So
Yes.
to me, there's that. So that's a different. I'm answering from a different place on that question. Now, if you're talking
So
about
it's sentimental. It's priceless because it's sentimentality.
But it's also
Understood.
fun as shit.
Sure.
Like, really, I don't know if I can say that, but I said
yes, you can. Yes, you can. We're all adults.
Fun. I love
There's
my
going to be a
Hondas.
little tiny E on the thumbnail, and everyone will know that it has a curse word in it. So it's all good.
I've driven everything. I've even owned an NSX, and I've driven the piss out of that. I've done wheel to wheel in an NSX.
Okay.
So I love that. I love that car too. Let's see. Shoot, man, you're going through a massive Rolodex, right? Because I've driven almost everything.
Yes.
Number one favorite car. That I've driven.
That you have
on
driven.
A track.
In any context, you could have street raced it. You could have driven it on the track. You could have autocrossed it only. You could have time attacked it only, or you could have done all three. The one car that you just felt was the best car you have ever driven. Any make, model, any geographic region, anything. Which is the one that just is king shit to you?
So I already said Integra, and I did love my NSX. And so, but something that keeps popping into my head, and I know I'm under pressure right here, so I'm just going to answer it. Is a 996 GT3. It was yellow, and I got to drive that thing. This the NA one, right?
Yes.
400 something horsepower. Dude, that thing was cool. That was super
just
fun
the quality, the balance, and the precision of the vehicle, right?
No.
Then why?
No. Well, Porsches. If you've ever driven, have you ever driven a Porsche, a high-powered one on a racetrack? Like you feel like it's balanced.
Okay, so I haven't driven it on a racetrack, but I've driven a GT3 RS, and just a couple of like random 911s of like just different eras, But I mean, I felt like a GT3 RS was, I mean, amongst a few things, it was pretty damn balanced.
It felt balanced. Okay, so yeah, I might have a different,
but yours, place. But you're driving it in a different capacity. I wasn't trying to. It wasn't my car, number one, so I was not pushing into it. Maybe 60%, not even 60%.
Yeah. So when we're talking about cars, I'll say balance to me is E36 M3. Amazing balance in that car. Then you also have E36 M3. Then you also have amazing balance. Everyone kind of knows this. Miata, right?
Sure.
Slow though. Slow. No horsepower, but fast and mean in its own way. But to me, Porsche's got super attitude. Like I'll give you an example. NSX, is it balanced? Mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, one of the best cars ever made, especially at the time. Yeah, of course, they talk about that balance, but it will bite you in the ass the moment you don't know how to drive it.
Okay.
And so,
fair enough.
So to me, it's very hard to save an NSX when you go off bat. So what I always called an NSX was it's one of those cars that rewards you for good driving, punishes you for bad.
Understood.
And so for me, that Porsche GT3 was quite wicked, and I say that with respect, right?
Sure.
You'll go around fast, but you'll also pay a price if you don't know what the hell you're doing. And so it's not the most comfortable thing to drive really fast.
Yes.
But it'll get there for you if you know how to wield the weapon, right? And so in that case, I was just like, man, this thing's amazing. And at the end of the day, all the Porsche guys tell you the same thing. Porsche put the damn engine in the back, and that engine is trying to do everything it can to put itself back in the front. So
understood.
Absolutely true. So anyways, that car, the GT3, is popping up in the top of my head. But my top 3 cars right now that I'm looking at that I think are amazing cars that I know I haven't driven. One of my number one cars of all time, McLaren F1. Okay. Second is the McLaren Senna. Oh, wow, dude.
Yeah.
And then the third is the NSX GT3. That new NSX, man, I know a lot of people had a lot of problems with it when it first came out because it wasn't like the original NSX. And I understand I'm an original NSX owner and all that, but God, it has just really, really started to grow on me.
Look, Dennis, listen, man.
yeah.
The people who have a complaint about the new NSX aren't the people who own one.
That's a lot more people than people that own one.
Okay,
they sell like
fair
600 a year.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the people who have something to bitch about aren't the people who could have afforded one anyways.
There you go.
Okay, so I had the honor of going into the PMC, which is in Ohio.
Yep.
That's the manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And we got a tour, which was, it's not an easy thing to get in there.
Lucky
right?
dude, man.
So we had a tour, and I watched step by step as they created this. Okay, and
my God,
the 11
That's
patents that Honda had to create just to make
Just
the
to make it.
manufacturing process.
Yeah.
Okay, and the QC and the double checking from station to station to watch it be assembled. And I walked out of that facility. I'm a Honda enthusiast. I'm appreciative of the lineage, the racing history, the accomplishments, et cetera, et cetera. Already a big fan. I mean, the NA1 NSX is one of my favorite cars of all time for numerous reasons. And yes, I hear all this, four motors and hybrid this, and it's not part of the original. And I was like, but let's go see. And I witnessed the dedication to what Honda wanted to create when they chose to do this. And I was just like, dude, I am absolutely converted. If I wasn't, I was hardly skeptical, but you get to see it,
Yeah.
And it was just amazing, because, I host the IBOC meet. We go all over the country. And one of the stops that we have is in Ohio. And Ohio, which interestingly enough, there is still a massive amount of people that don't understand how deep and how long Honda has provided an entire community with jobs. It's not recent. They have been there for decades. There is a massive section of Ohio, which is called the Heartland of America.
Yep.
Where it is Honda everything, right? Honda factories, and the PMC is over there, the Performance Manufacturing Center, and you get to see, which is one of the reasons why I find it so interesting that there's still this stereotype from old school Americana about that's an import and don't support imports, support America. And I'm just like, yeah, that car was assembled down the street and has been assembled there for like 20 years.
Yep.
So it's amazing, man. Okay, so the NSX, but how about this? Which one out of any car you've ever driven is the flat out scariest?
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say what first came to my mind.
The GT3.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
No.
Scariest car.
This would be probably. I'm probably one of the only people that could give you this answer.
Okay.
Is being in a race, in literally any race car, like I've done in the past, where you get to the race, you're in the green flag start.
Okay.
You happen to be like me, where you happen to be good at starts, if it's a standing start, and I end up taking 2 or 3 positions I'm not supposed to have right at the beginning before turn 1.
Okay.
In a car that's not working right and could potentially fall apart in the middle of a race.
And you're feeling this at turn 1?
Yeah, dude. Dude, you got to get on the track. So shocks are bottoming out, bushing's going, some linkage is like jerry rigged, whatever. And I would drive the piss out of the car, but it would also get upset, right?
Yes.
So the scariest thing is any car that I've ever been in that's like that, and I've been in different situations in that way when I race, where faster cars are behind you, they're all over you, and your car is going to, you don't know if your car is going to go or not. And, and you're taking it, like, for example, like there was these times where I was racing my ass off, trying to stay ahead at Willow Springs. And anybody that's raced Willow Springs knows turn 8 is the fastest turn on that track. And it's bumpy. And what happened was we were sponsored by Tane at the time. I had N1s, and they were bottoming out.
Okay.
And the faster I would go, the more they would bottom out, right?
Sure.
And they bottomed out literally in the middle of turn 8 at 100 and I don't know what it was at the time. I think it was 130 something. I don't remember. But imagine turning right, hitting the bump, bumps, it hits the stops,
Yes.
rear end kicks out,
Yes.
and I have to hold it without letting go of the throttle
Right.
and try to keep someone off my butt that's trying to pass me in that turn, because that's where you should be passed. It's
Yes.
crazy. And I'm just doing this turn after turn after turn, trying to hang on to this car. And you're praying for the stupid white flag to come out, which means final lap, so that you can finish this craziness that you don't
Yes.
know why you got into this, and you swear, I mean, you're in there going, I'm going to kill myself, like
Yeah.
something's going to happen. And and I have been at the racetrack where someone has died, so I know it's real. And so
Yes.
that's the first thing that came to my mind. Sorry, I know that wasn't really your answer, but I think I'm one of the few people that you probably guessed that could answer that question in this way. So I thought that was interesting. But any car you're in that's not prepared enough to be in the position that it's in the racetrack, that you have no idea if it's going to fly off or not, and you got to stay in the race.
Okay, so it isn't the car, it's the scenario.
There you go.
Because I have a ton of friends, man. I mean, I've done a track event that the car was mildly powered, right? So I can't say that I've experienced what you're talking about,
Mm.
but I have friends who have described that, and I think that that's a cool answer, because it's kind of, it doesn't really matter what the car is. You're talking
Yeah.
about in that moment, you're like, is this shit gonna fall apart and I'm going to die?
And it's wheel to wheel, so you're forced.
Yeah. I mean, look, dude, I think that that's really cool. You have these various vehicles that you have behind the wheel experience with, the art, the magazine lineage, and just getting from the 90s till now, and seeing people either who have been in it for 15 to 20 years in some capacity, whether just as an enthusiast or a consumer, and then the people who turned it into some type of livelihood or business. It's really cool to see that type of re-emergence of things, and in this case, the reboost. So I think it's awesome. I'm glad to have played even a tiny role as a backer, but also as someone who has the ability to provide this platform. The Think Bigger podcast. It's not called the buildabettercarproject.com. It's called the Think Bigger project. It's about the way people think, because the way you think is the way you act. The way you think is the way you conduct business. The way you think is the way you treat your fellow human beings. And in the end, it's not about objects. It's not about cars. It's bigger than that. It's about the culture, and it's about the community. And that's what this is all about. So having you on here, I mean, if we could spend an hour and a half talking about one of the decades, or one venture.
Just Fast and the Furious, we could talk an hour and a half.
I would know. I have about 7 minutes worth of conversation to be had about that, and then it would be all you, man. Because I literally have only watched 2 out of, what are they on?
No, we could complain.
Fast 13 by now. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're on, but anyways, honestly, Dennis, I'm glad that we're able to make this happen. I'm glad to see Volume 2. I'm glad to see some of this like old school culture from the import community that I was a kid on, and now to have that full circle come around, and now I get to be, apparently myself and my car are going to be on the cover, which is really just ridiculous, man. So, I know that there's going to be more growth, and I know that you're going to end up being back on, because there's going to be so many more cool stories and successes to be had. And I look forward to that. But in the meantime, just like anyone else, I am looking forward to, of course, amidst all of the interesting global circumstances, for the time for Volume 2 to land, both figuratively and literally, and be able to be in the hands of all of the people who want it to, So
right on.
That's really, it's really, really cool to have you on. All of you guys listening, I always encourage, the new listeners. Every week there's new listeners. You guys, it is about the conversation. It is about continuing it. This isn't just for you to listen to Dennis's stories and his multiple successes and failures and growth to get to where he is now. It isn't just about that, but it's about continuing the conversation. So on my personal Instagram, every single episode, this one included, will have its own post with its own color coordinated thumbnail. I'll put all of Dennis's Max Boost information for those of you that have no idea what any of this is. As soon as you're done, take the time to look it up, take the time to comment on his pages, on mine, and so you can ask questions, make comments, and really just continue. It's not just once you're done here, that's the end of it. Engage, interact, be a part of something that you like, and that's the only way for the things that matter and the people that matter to survive and thrive, is if people actively support them. Passively liking it, double tapping it, and just being like, oh, that's really cool, that doesn't keep things alive. You've got to actually put time and effort into the people and the things that matter. And if you look up Dennis, you look up Max Boost, and you like it, support it, and anyone and anything else that you think is worth your time and your money and your effort and your passion. And that's what it's all about. Keeping the culture and the community alive, and not just alive, but thriving. So, Dennis, I appreciate you very much for being on the Think Bigger podcast. Community Conversations is about having a conversation with a member of the community and learning not just about them, but learning from them. And I genuinely believe that people who have listened are going to have learned not just about you, but from you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's an honor to be on here. And I want to say thank you to you for doing what you do. We need a you in this community, and we appreciate that. And you stepping up, not like you said, not talking about it, you're doing it. So thank you, and keep it up. And if there is anything we could do for you, you let us know.
Appreciate you, Dennis. Everyone,
All
you
right.
guys, please keep in touch, continue the conversation, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Think Bigger podcast. Thank Dennis.
Thank you, brother. See ya.
Peace.